Okay. Well, so for the introductory words, it is my great pleasure, dear ladies and gentlemen, to be here and to give you a little bit of a glimpse on the future, how we see it developing at the moment. To cut a long story short, I mean, nobody knows what the future will be, so there is always futures. Future is always unknown. And this has been my business also during my career that I had before joining a fashion university as a professor, because I did foresight for Deutsche Bank and for Daimler back in the days. So actually I'm not a newcomer to foresight. And 8 years ago, I started with the gracious support of a big German foundation, a project which was called How to Sustainably and More Ethically Use Generative AI and AI. 8 years ago, everybody was not talking about these kind of things. Now everybody is talking about it. I think in 2 years' time, we will not be talking so much about AI, but AI will still be there. But it will be mainstream. It will be in the applications. It will be in the workflows. Because AI is very special as a technology. So what we will be doing today, and now I think the clicker works, is about how to design anticipations of paths of AI transformation, then going into taking a short glimpse into the AI as a multifaceted, emerging, multi-purpose technology. We will then go a little bit into actually going into the transformations which we will be seeing, but actually always taking as a caveat with us, well, we cannot know the future, and the future is wide open at the moment. So I will also present you with two probable actually development paths of AI in the fashion industry and for the fashion industry. And then I will go a little bit deeper into the changes to the innovation game, because what we are facing as companies, but also as business schools and as fashion schools, is a tremendous change to these very logics, how business is being done. And last but not in any way least, I will go a little bit deeper into my most liked discussions about competencies and more competency-based curricula in the future, because after all, AI is a knowledge technology, so we are actually very much challenged to develop our knowledge further. Talking about that, as I said, major transformations are at the moment underway. And bear with me that my slides are totally full. I'm an academic by heart, so this is really full slides. But I just wanted to give you some kind of also food for thought, and now also wanted to introduce you a little bit to these kind of things. So after all, it's about being adaptive in the future. Because in some of my companies that I'm working together with, because apart from my professorship, I have the pleasure also to consult some companies, and they are actually preoccupied, like Liz said, like Hannah said, with this question of how to get AI adaptive and how to really step up to that, what they are facing at the moment. Having said this, we also look into roadblocks. So just bear with me as an academic. I have been performing quite a lot of causal layered analysis. This is a kind of technique which is kind of really troublesome because it really delves deep onto holistic and systemic thinking. And this is also, well, to give you a little kind of glimpse on the end of the presentation, we as educators and we as business people are in the future even more challenged to think along the lines of ecosystems, systems, and holistic perspectives. Because this is where AI is not very good at the moment, and humans will always be. Because an AI normally does not have a perspective, but we will also go a little bit deeper in the afternoon and panels, probably that AI will have perspectives, and it's very important to then see which perspectives they have. Having said this, let us take a look into AI, but this is, I will keep it very short. So this is some kind of data. You know, I'm also kind of a business person. I've been doing number crunching for quite a long time, and I always use these kind of numbers, which are quite good. So you can see here some data of the OECD talking about AI as a multi-purpose technology. To cut a long story short, AI is not only changing the face of fashion as an industry, but it's actually changing all the other industries. I also had the privilege just 2 months ago to have a kind of keynote on AI in the textiles industry, and I can tell you it's even more encompassing and more far-reaching, which will be the changes which will be coming all about. Having said this is just a few kind of, as I said, orientations on why AI is so multifaceted. And to sum all that up, if we're looking into AI, so what is AI actually all about? It's about data, and it's about knowledge. But it's also about data, and then having this data to get into information to knowledge, and then the wisdom of how to use this information and this data. And this is something which will be very important for the future, especially for the educators, because we will see a plethora of different solutions. So actually it's not about only about the how-to, but it's also about the wisdom, why and when to use what and which application. Because there will be a number of applications around. So it will be about collecting new kinds of data. It will be about aggregating this data. It will be about analyzing this data. And last but not in any way least, it will be also about the monetization of this data and the usage of this data. Having said this, I myself am looking from a perspective as a professor for innovation management into algorithmic innovation. This is a perspective which goes back to Josef Schumpeter, and I took him to get a little bit of glimpse on this kind of innovation. So what we're seeing new data and new supplies of data. We're seeing new algorithmic production technologies, which is new AI engines, new algorithms, new kind of orientations. This is all about the work on the foundational models and machine learning and all these kind of things. We see new responsible algorithmic product design. And we see actually, which is the minefield at the moment, the new explanatory variance and the marketability of AI, because this is actually where the competition between the different AI companies is at the moment, really, and there is war out there. Having said this, we will see also a new degree of sustainable algorithmic innovation, although having said this, well, we see, OpenAI, the word says it already, they tend to think that they're very open. In my point of view, they're open in a very peculiar way, because they're not very open source when it really comes to sharing the fruit of that, what they have been doing. So please also, as a caveat, take that we actually also, when it comes to open strategy, when it really comes to open innovation, we still have a long way to go. Taking that in mind, well, I have been asked by Hannah and Mika and Liz and Claudine to take a closer look into that, what is happening for all of the fashion industry. And this is only in 30 minutes. Well, challenge accepted. So we will be taking a close look into design and collection development practices, into the production, into the supply, marketing and retail, styling and fashion reception, and last but not in any way least, fashion consumption practices. Because just 3 weeks ago, the Eco-Design Directive of the European Union has been accepted, which actually will change the very requirements of many companies talking about these kind of things like durability. Well, this is going to be interesting, and it's actually one challenge that a company can only actually live up to on the basis of digital product passports, so enhanced data collection and also AI. Because no designer can actually cope with the knowledge and with the expertise that is out there and with the different orientations, so we need these knowledge technologies. Bitterly. Having said this, we will now take a closer look into the transformations. So, we are at the moment at a crossroads. And this is why we have been introducing the X. So we will be seeing that today's value creation concepts and the fashion cycle will be changing quite a lot for the future. And to just, as a kind of conceptual lens for the future, we can see that we will have probably two different ways in which these kind of things can be changing. Having said this, we will, on the one hand, have an upper leg of the X, which will be the most desirable outcome of AI transformations. That is to say that the prime directive of the fashion industry, of AI in the fashion industry, of data collection, data aggregation, data monetization, and data use will be amelioration. That is to say, a total different fashion industry actually providing totally different quality products. We will actually talk about the quality of products. I mean, if you now go on some kind of online platform, take every online platform, what can you really find out about the quality of your garment? What do these platforms really tell you about the durability, about also the performance? Actually, not very much. And this can be helped with knowledge technologies like AI. And you can just see this amelioration, so you can see blockchain and digital product passports in this upper visual. And in this upper visual, well, you probably know about the 17 SDGs, which is the Sustainable Development Goals as being put forward by the United Nations. And this is not only the 17 goals, but also the partial goals. So because there are not only 17 goals, but to make it a little bit more complicated, each of the 17 goals has some kind of sub-goals, and this is actually what amelioration would look like according to these SDGs. So you see that also for the X, I work together with a very good colleague of mine, Hani Sada, and she has been coming up with this kind of visualization. I mean, she has been coming up with it, not an AI. So really talking, also symbolizing and signifying that we will have a more colorful orientation, also talking about the metrics. We're really talking down numbers. I mean, I come from also the financial services industry, and you probably have heard that the IFRS has now also S1 and S2. So the sustainable materiality is also to be regarded as a very important factor, not only the financial materiality. And this is what this should mean. So our number crunching will change totally. AI systems will operate on different data than they do today. But the future is not given. We can also go a different direction. And this is where we can also go. And this is also a probable way. I would have to admit that probably this is the most probable way where it will go to, given the causal layered analysis and given the existing logics in the fashion industry and in retail and in social media. So what we will be seeing is an algorithmically intensified, hyper-pitched and hyper-paced fashion industry. So we will not only do more of the same like we did also today. So if you ask me today, what has AI been already doing for the fashion industry? Quite a lot, because it has been really delving on automation and acceleration. I mean, the acceleration that we have been seeing in all of the processes is tremendous and really astonishing. Having said this, this will only be the beginning. So as you see in the visual, it's fast forward, it's acceleration, and we will also have an amplification. That is to say, these trends and hypes will be also amplified. In the future, I can also see that sometimes AI will come up with trends, then AIs will react on these trends, and then we have a kind of, well, the AI hunting after the AI trends, and then we have all these kind of things happening. There is a very good paper about hallucinations, which has just been published yesterday. It's very worth a good read. It's really astonishing what will be happening. So this is to say, the future has to be shaped and changed, because otherwise we will be moving in that kind of direction. Because as I said, the existing logics in the fashion industry, one may like it or not, we know about it. Price, price, price. Having said this, what are the AI transformations to and in 2035? And now I really know that this is really an academic's work. So really, this is really tough. It's not something for you that I will go very much deeper into. I will just give you some kind of, well, glimpses of that what we will be seeing. Talking about design and collection development, we will be talking about the first step, which will be appreciated and augmented choices of preferred materials. We all know about the BOMs, the bill of materials. We will be talking about bills of preferred materials. So designers will also, with their competence, have to tell which kind of fiber to use, which kind of material to use, and AI can help with that if the AI is fed with the right knowledge and the right data. Talking about production, we will also talk about new digital AI assets like these assetified and appreciated orientations. This is really, I have been talking to some of the financial market players, and they are now introducing assessments of the valuation of a company based on these kind of things and on the production capabilities. Talking about the supply chains, we will move to supply chain ecosystems and supply ecosystems. Just a little hint on that, we see that already happening in China with Shein and Temu quite a lot. An integrated ecosystem where we have also financial linkages and linkages throughout the supply chain. And the very important thing is that fashion consumption and clothing practices, so the end consumer will be much more integrated than today. So I had a lot of discussions about regulations, and all the people then in Europe say, well, the regulations will not stay like this, the Greens will lose, and then we will go back to where we come from. I would agree to disagree. I'm looking into China, I'm looking into Vietnam, and actually if you can read the 5-year plans of the Chinese government, it will give you some ideas that they actually got the message that this kind of production systems and regimes will not be there to stay in the future because we just cannot sustain it. Having said this, talking about marketing and retail, we all love it and hate it. We will be talking about more reactive, nudge-oriented, omni-channel customer shopper journeys, and we're also talking about more informed and evidence-based advertising, but only in the amelioration. So this is what I'm talking about. This is the amelioration side. This is not the tough side about the hyper-paced competition. This is the positive side. Having said this, we will also talk about different styling and fashion reception. So we will have more AI accentuated and more real-time trends. This is actually something we have been seeing for the last years, but it will intensify. And most importantly, we will have dynamic pricing. I don't know if you heard it yesterday, Walmart now came out with it. Walmart will introduce by 2026 digital shelves. Why? Because then they actually can change dynamically their pricing. I've heard that in Foot Locker already in London, in the center of London, we have some dynamic pricing going on, and store assistants will have to react quite swiftly to changes in prices. This will only be amplified by AI. I come from the financial services industry, so I can tell you, algo trading, we have been seeing that for ages. Having said this, fashion consumption, clothing practices, what we will be seeing is more AI activating innosuming. So one of my papers I wrote back in the days was about older people and older people not being regarded as innovative people. I can tell you some of the older people I know are very innovative, but they're not being regarded as that. Companies always tell us we have to go for the young people. Sometimes young people are more conservative than old ones. So actually, we have to go beyond these kind of orientations, and we will go with that in this amelioration. But as I said, this is only one part of the scenario. It can also go bad. And this would be the other side of this kind of new fashion circle, how I always call it. But I will not go deeper into this because we want to have a very nice day and we want to have a kind of more constructive and forward-looking way. So probably it's also nice to prime ourselves for the better future. Having said this and talking about the future, what is happening? These kind of, awkward things that you see on the side is the vectors of digital transformation, how they have been done by the OECD. The OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and I had the privilege to work together with them. So actually also on this paper, some kind of 5-6 years ago, these are vectors of digital transformation. And, well, I have been asked by Mika, Hannah, Liz, and Claudine to also say what the UK can do in the future. Well, coming from where we stand and where we have been going to with the UK, I will see that we will see new AI-based scaling and retailing. I mean, let me put it like this, talking about retail, pop-ups, all these kind of different other stuff, London has always and will always probably be one of the hotspots. But you're facing competition. Look into the United Arab Emirates. Look into Saudi. Look into China. So this is interesting. Talking about new AI product development, integrating neatly production, incorporating multiculturality and indigenous knowledge and repositories. In my point of view, please use the real legacy of the United Kingdom and London as one of the most multicultural cities that I know. We have been talking over dinner about it. Well, in London, you can actually be who you are without, well, facing some kind of major backlashes. And this is something which is very important, and this is also from a political point of view, it may be an asset in the future. Also about how to integrate indigenous knowledge. Also how to re-establish relationships and overcome colonialism in a different way, like building new partnerships with these kind of countries that you have been actually with in the United Kingdom. Having said this, we're also talking about finance, this kind of new valuations. I mean, Liz, as the Dean of the Fashion Business School, well, valuation questions are always important and very, very sophisticated when it comes to the fashion industry. This will also be changed by AI. Having said this, and now this is the academic speaking again, talking about the Kyric orientation. Kairos was a deity in the Hellenic tradition, and it was a deity talking about time and the right timing. So actually, Kairos is a kind of nice orientation. So it's about right timing and being at the pace of AI and right pacing in this kind of context. It's also about new virtual environments. We will be hearing much more about that in the afternoon in one session that we have about embedding AI. And it's also about assisting and empowerment of the edges. Well, AI will be on every phone. I mean, yesterday we heard Tim Cook. Tim Cook now made the deal with the devil and got OpenAI into the iPhone. But this is just the beginning. Because Samsung actually has just been yesterday organizing its research centers on AI and will be also rolling out the AI orientations on the different orientations. And if we talk about Apple and Samsung, we're actually talking about the mobile phones of the world. I mean, there are others, but this is the most important. Having said this, we will talk about total new platforms and ecosystems managed by AI, based on AI capabilities. And this is also where the UK and especially London is actually very important. I don't know if somebody from Microsoft is here. I know that somebody from IBM is here. So we will probably hearing about that, also what IBM does. So actually London is a very good place for these kind of things, and also learning these things is very important. So let me sum up, because I've been talking quite a lot, probably too much. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but just bear with me for the last part. And this is what we should do as higher education institutions. So actually, for navigating these transformations which are up and coming, and I actually wanted to underline again, these transformations are happening and they're open. The future is open. It is there to be shaped. Having said this, to be able to shape it, we should be more oriented on enabling the sustainable algorithmic innovation. Keeping in mind, we did have and we did see quite a lot of algorithmic innovation already, but this has not been sustainable algorithmic innovation. We should design with more wisdom and not only applied knowledge. If I sometimes see how many companies are taking on AI, we had just had a short discussion with Liz about it and with Jens, who will also be a presenter. Well, some of the companies are now jumping on the bandwagon, and then they face lawsuits because IPR will be an issue in the future. It is already an issue. So actually, it's also about enabling future decision makers and future also co-workers of doing the right things and not doing these kind of things which are not very good for the company, and to learn to navigate and overcome the biases. Actually, what we are seeing at the moment is the data collection and the knowledge that is being used is actually quite limited. And it's full of biases. I mean, I just wrote a very good paper. It's a kind of list of all these kind of things that we don't want to see. I mean, it's really tremendous how biased sometimes AI tools are, and nobody is really taking care of it. So what should we do? Along the lines of digital competencies, we should do more work on information data literacy and more enablement for AI-supported changes and AI-supported new forms of literacy. And last but not in any way least, and these kind of things are being based on the DIGCOM framework and the Green Competencies framework of the European Commission. So it's really about really embracing the sustainabilities with the values. We have to do much more when it comes to normative competencies and with values. So why do we really do things? How do we do them in an ethical way, but not ethical in a way that, oh, this is not ethical, this is not good. Ethical also when it comes to also make changes which are for the better for us all. Having said this, we should be more thinking along the lines of holism, emergence. Emergence means that some things pop up and will always pop up, and we have to take that into account. Talking about adaptation, which will be most important, and I'm very thankful that you organized this AI Symposium, and thank you very much again for this great organization and this great idea, because it's the right time to do it. We're talking about connectivity, about ecosystems, about critical thinking, and about problem framing. Because, again, it's all about perspective, and normally an AI does not have a perspective, or it does have a perspective, and we should be very closely looking into which perspective that is. Having said this, more work on envisioning AI and sustainability, and more, and this is the last point, acting on it. Engaging in it. Really also questioning these things. In the afternoon session, we will be talking about embedding AI and in the creative process. We have to go for that. As designers, as fashion managers, we have to go in that, because otherwise we will probably go into a direction that we don't want to go to. Having said this, this is just a small rule book which I've been coming up with some co-workers, because I have some kind of a little setup which is called an AI Design Competence Collective. But having said this, I now took enough of your time, and I'm now looking very much forward to your questions and answers. Thank you very much for your attention. Any questions? Any remarks, commentaries?
Okay. Getting some coming. These steps are like half step.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. I noticed you drew Schumpeter into your presentation. Can I just check you're thinking about that in terms of creative destruction? And if so, what will AI destruct?
So talking about, I chose Schumpeter as a kind of conceptual lens because his work on creative destruction is, in my point of view, still very forward-looking. So for me, Schumpeter is really the economist of the 21st century. So I'm a total Schumpeterian guy. Having said this, and this is why I came up with this kind of algorithmic innovation thinking, it's based on the 5 dimensions that Schumpeter once wrote about in 1934. So just to give you a kind of impression, this was based on the work of Schumpeter, because actually Schumpeter, in a paper which is not so widely known, has been really going into this creative destruction and then said, how is this creative destruction really happening? And he said 5 dimensions. New source of a new raw material, new production technologies, new products, new markets, or total new ways of organizing. And this is what I tried to take on for algorithmic innovation, and it's kind of interesting how this conceptual lens probably helps you to understand this innovation better.
Those two ideas, something from 100 years ago, connect so well.
Definitely. So this is also something about, very important to take on, all this blah blah and BS about AI taking over and these kind of things. Well, humans have always been kind of thinking and pondering and also providing concepts which are timeless. So actually this is also something you can probably go. And talking about the creative destruction, well, creative destruction can also be very bad. And this is why I came up with this transformation. Because it can go the bad way. Totally. So we all have to work on probably doing it in the right way.
There was a slide on David Tease's dynamic capabilities. And because that comes from a strategy strand, I'm wondering what your input is when we combine AI and strategy.
Well, AI and strategy will be and are already closely interconnected. So I'm working together with the consultancy, and they are organizing open strategy orientations. It's built on the open strategy books, which are widely known probably. And talking about that, AI is already doing quite a lot. And it will be doing much more, because we know in strategy, we always try to, as Giddens would have been saying, colonizing the future. So we come up with our roadmaps, we come up with our plans, we come up with our anticipations. Well, I have been told that most of these things are now being done also with AI. So AI and strategy are closely interconnected. The other part of your question is, a part of every strategy at the moment should be about algorithmic innovation. I'm really telling algorithmic innovation and not AI, because it's really about what kind of foundational models to develop, which kind of data to collect. I mean, if I'm looking into the most companies, they have a dearth of data. They will be throwing AI capabilities and sense-making capabilities onto data which is not there to be used for that. So this is actually something. So we have to be very careful, because we're running into that what we call reifications. So causal mislinkages and to get causal relations totally wrong. And I think we're at the very brink of moving into these reifications.
Thank you.
But thank you for the question.
Hi. No, thanks. That was great. Some of the work I'm doing is looking at, I'm not even sure what the question is, but it's definitely linked to what the first gentleman said. Some of the work I'm looking at is how, I guess in the last 20 years, especially with the addition of kind of high street players who can do things at scale, we've kind of witnessed the diffusion cycle shorten in time. And this is a very specific issue with fashion because of the calendar and schedule and the delivery windows, etc. And what we're kind of seeing is that really the beneficiaries is you've had a double-edged sword with the internet, where it's democratized access for many smaller, innovative trend and style innovators on the furthest left of the diffusion curve. But they've kind of simultaneously, that has also fed the ability for those bigger players to kind of create a shorter tail market distribution, when in fact you have this long tail potential in the access. What I'm worried about, especially within fashion, is when those kinds of organizations get their hands on AI to further exploit that gap in trend and style innovation to more efficiently. So this, when you talk about sort of data access and IPR, obviously, especially, what's your sort of thinking around how that's approached specifically within fashion and that specific kind of quirk within fashion related to the schedule?
So this is something about this kind of very probable scenario. We have been seeing that already. the big players got already their hands on these kind of things. We see it in pricing strategies, we see it in all the kind of collection cycles, everything. And like Shein, we will be seeing the IPO in London probably by the end of this week, and we just have heard yesterday 40% increase. So I'm a big fan of the FTC at the moment, you know, the Federal Trade Commission in the US, because they just opened an antitrust orientation on the biggest players. Having said this, we will have to see much more antitrust cases and antitrust procedures coming in the next years. And I'm very worried. Because as you said, on the one hand, we could democratize quite a lot, but on the other hand, the large players who have the capacities, well, they will be up and running, and they will be running at a very high pace and with a very high pitch. So we all know how much an hour of Azure, like the AWS, costs. We all know how much it actually costs to go into these kind of things. We are now seeing that NVIDIA is now, well, one of the most valuable companies all over the world, and there is reason to that because we all need these data centers. But do we really need it? So this is really something very, very good remark, very good question. This is also part of the thinking about this algorithmically intensified, high-pitched orientation. And we will see a lot of also creative destruction being done, but really not so creative, but creating something that we don't want. So new trusts and new kind of players actually kind of really also strangulating the market. So this is actually something we have to take into account because, and this fits very well with the dynamic capabilities. Because some of the players have the capacities, they have the money to invest in, they have the power, the computing power, but they also have the talent. Because you just don't need a data scientist, you need data architects, you need the domain professionals who know about the domain. Actually, I don't see so much problems at the moment. I mean, there is a dearth of data scientists, data architects, and people know their way around. But I see the real dearth when it comes to the domain specialists. So which kind of data to really use and what not to use? Which kind of implicit really to go for, with implicit knowledge to really go for? So, but thank you very much for that very good remark. And I also have always a lot of questions. I'm not quite sure which questions I have. So very much the same.
We have another question now.
Hi, hello, thank you for your presentation. I've got an emotional question, and I hope it's okay to ask you. When you first started researching AI, did you ever become overwhelmed? Because this is my response in a good way today.
Having said this, and this is thank you very much for that, because we need to be empathetic. We need to be emotional about these kind of things. Mm-hmm. Having said this, when I was asked by this large foundation in Germany 8 years ago, together with some other eggheads, it was really kind of interesting because we all have been really left to our own devices. Mm-hmm. We already saw it coming, and it's huge. It's really huge. Having said this, well, there is a Chinese proverb, if a storm comes up, some people like to cower in the trenches, and some people build windmills. Mm-hmm. So this is about building windmills.
Wonderful.
About really going for these kind of applications, which go into sustainable AI. I mean, just in the morning I have read that now Aramco, you probably know this kind of small company, it's a Saudi Arabian largest producer of oil worldwide. Their venture arm has now been investing into one AI startup which can help to actually better manage AI supply chains with AI. I'm a big fan of that. Because I can tell you, I've been working with peer companies from steel, aluminium, all these kind of industries, and there is a lot to do. And we can do so much better. Also in the fashion industry, we can do so much better. Looking at our supply chains, it's really fascinating what we could do. So this is actually, and answering that question, I'm totally with people who say, what the hell? Holy moly, what is coming out there? And it's really also, we don't only have FOMO, but we also have FOBO, which is the fear of becoming obsolete. And this is what we all share. Because also, and well, let me use this word, sometimes the innovation propaganda, which is done by some companies, tends to over accentuate the productivity gains which can be made by applying AI. So I think we, at the long end, we also have to redefine productivity. I mean, from an economics point of view, productivity measures are crap anyways, total factor productivity and these kind of stuff. So we have to rethink these kind of things. But again, a long answer for a very short and very good question. Thank you.
Hello, over here. You've mentioned quite a few times, it seems to come up in every answer, the importance of the quality of your data. So I'm just, maybe it's too low level for this, but what markers are you looking for the quality of data to feed to AI? Very broad.
Well, it really depends on the product, on the domain. Quality measures can be quite different. I mean, we have normally these kind of criteria for the quality of data, which is veracity, which is also the kind of, well, also intertemporal stability of the data and how it's being collected. Also, if you're able to come up with this data and then build longer timelines and make information out of that. So we have all these kind of basic criteria to the quality of data. I mean, as a short answer to that, there is a very good ISO norm on the quality of data, and this ISO norm is very good. But having said this, this is only the very beginning, because it really goes down to each product. So I had a discussion now about setting up digital product passports for some kind of outerwear. With an outerwear company, we had to really dig very deep. And we had to find out that for most of the performance aspects and for most of the eco-design requirements, we didn't have any data. So talking about durability, tough luck. Because how often have you really tested these kind of things? New materials coming up. Interesting. So again, I cannot really answer because it is very specific. And this is what I also meant with, we have a dearth of domain-specific people going into that, working together with data scientists and machine learners. At the moment, we have also this kind of notion of governments pouring out money for people to be trained in Python and machine learning and all these kind of different stuff. But we don't have so much money for the real domain applications. And this is very important, so I hope that I kind of gave you a kind of impression of that, what I'm thinking about when we talk about quality of data.
Can I start? Hi, thank you for your presentation here. Hi. It's good to know that AI has such a huge potential in all aspects of the system. But then jumping to the other end, potential means power. And what would be your top advice to give to competition or regulation authorities at the moment?
Whoa, that's a tough one. Only one?
No, I think it's good that you mentioned antitrust. I just want to know your top worries.
Yeah. So my top worries are at the moment that our existing criteria for going into antitrust procedures from the legal point of view are actually centered around a single legal entity, whereas the new normal is that we also have conglomerate structures already at work, and we have actually quite sophisticated value creation models being supported by these AI companies. And I let my students do some work. So 3 of my most talented students, they had the kind of very bad orientation. Sometimes I'm a bad boy, and I give out these kind of very bad assignments. So this kind of bad assignment was really looking into the yielded financial reports of the most important fashion companies. and then trying to make a sense of how much they have been really investing into AI and in which kind of thing, you cannot tell. And this is bad. Talking about R&D, talking about training. I mean, actually, if you say AI, you should say training. Microsoft is very good. I mean, just as a fun fact, now, just 2 weeks ago, Microsoft said that they will build 2 new data centers in Sweden, but they will also train 250,000 people in the next 2 years in AI in Sweden. So again, also for the antitrust and for the regulators, look deeper and look further than the existing legal entities and single legal entities. I mean, there has been done very much great work already, especially in the European Commission, because the competition DG, the Director General being for competition, they have been doing some very good work. But also we always have to keep in mind that it is so fast-paced and so fast-moving, that you really get under stress. So also, do not stress enough, but really go down into identifying and defining new metrics and new requirements. And this is not a national approach. This should be an international approach. Discussions are underway at the moment in the OECD, and the last meeting, which was held in Seoul, was quite good when it came to that. But having said this, so if you're more interested, probably you know the paper which has just been published 4 weeks ago by the OECD, by the working group on antitrust in AI. So they have been coming up with some kind of very good principles. So I would be very humble and modest and would say that I would not be the one to tell them what they should be looking for, because they're quite up on the point with that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I feel a bit greedy taking another question. This one is a very specific question. I think what you were saying about the supply chain productivity and efficiency and the AI, the part AI has to play in that is clear, especially in terms of predicting units and moving things more towards a pool-side economics. Would you say that AI still has a place in when we reach a further point of more like smaller manufacturing units using zero inventory technology, more decentralized? Is there still a place for that? Because actually that's just to do with someone wanting something and getting it, and the prediction aspect is less required.
Let me put it like this. We had a little talk with Liz just over coffee, subverting the system, and Jens also mentioned it, like going into subversion. I would see a big future also for smaller brands and incumbent actors of using decentralized finance. AI, together with decentralized finance, can actually change this very much. So one of my students is just finishing his bachelor's, he's more master's. He has been working on DeFi and its relevance for the future fashion industry. So we're talking about new forms of custodianship. We're talking about new forms of tokenization. And I think that actually these small British manufacturers, being based in Leeds, being based in Manchester, being based all over the UK and England, especially England, I think they would do very, very well if they could go for these kind of things. Having said, also working together with these finance guys, but there are not so many finance guys, I've been told, in the city working on decentralized finance. So you probably should better go to Portugal. So at the moment, I'm quite well in discussions with some kind of guys and girls in Lisbon and in Porto, because they have some kind of very good things going on there. And we know that the Portuguese are very good in manufacturing, especially for the textiles industry, footwear, you have it. So to answer your question, yes, there is some things that you can do about it. And I really see, well, these kind of smaller flowers also blossoming and getting into trees. But as you said, the large herds are also ramping. And this is also not, so this Indian proverb, if the elephants are rampaging, the grass is the one to suffer. This is something I'm very concerned about.
Brilliant. Let 1,000 flowers bloom.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's what the Chinese actually do. So the Chinese government, I kind of like them because they're not only going for the conglomerates, but they're also going for the small players in Hong Kong, in Shanghai, in Chengdu. So this is really something we also could probably take into account as a government when we talk about subsidies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ingo.